Welcome, Dolphin fans, to another edition of Dolphins in Depth, podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. I am your host, Miami Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly, and I am joined by the infamous Buzzman, Barry Jackson. Welcome to the show, Barry.
Mark, good. It's good to see you. And we have a topic that's as polarizing as anything in South Florida sports that we are going to present today to the viewing public.
You know what? I think people would be just as polarized on what to do with Jimmy Butler as they are in regards to what to do with Tua Tagovailoa. However, I will say this. Tua has a bigger name in sports right now than just about everybody with the exception of maybe 10 athletes. Clearly Messi, LeBron. Tua's probably got a bigger name than Steph Curry. I would argue too that he's got a bigger name than just about any quarterback in the NFL outside of Patrick Mahomes, just in terms of buzz click. He's got this sort of Tim Tebow-esque feel to him that makes him extremely polarizing. I don't get it. It is what it is. But the topic that we're going to discuss today, Barry, is I recently did a ranking of NFL quarterbacks. It's not a new thing. I've actually had this list ranked for months, gave it a lot of thought, double-checked it, and did it again and produced it to the Miami Herald. It's up on the Miami Herald's website. And then ESPN came out with a ranking as well, Barry. You're a little bit more familiar with it than I am because I really don't credit anything ESPN says or does. Nothing against the four-letter word people, but, hey. And I actually asked you to do your ranking as well, Barry, because I need us to cross-reference this. What do you want to share about the ESPN rankings?
Well, this annual poll done by Jeremy Fowler, who's a good guy, a good reporter, it always amuses me because it seems like the purpose of the poll is merely to produce controversial content for Mike Greenberg to use on Get Up. So they've thrown around the topic all week. And so you have, I don't want to say ESPN on ESPN crime, but you have the ESPN analysts being outraged by the results of the poll, where RG3 says that it's a spit in the face or a slap in the face to Tua that he was ranked 14th in this poll. Now, just to explain to the readers and the viewers who haven't seen this poll, this is Jeremy Fowler's poll of 80 NFL officials, a mix of coaches, scouts, team executives. Tua was ranked 14th in that poll. He finished fourth in honorable mention. And I know, obviously, in your individual rankings, which we'll discuss, he was 14th there as well. So,
and I didn't even see the ESPN poll when I've done it, and Tua's actually been here on this ranking for months.
Exactly. But Tua's ranking of 14th by you previously and by the ESPN poll and by Pro Football Focus is pretty consistent with where we've seen him ranked, which, of course, runs counter to the fact that he led the NFL in passing yards last year. He was an MVP candidate for much of last season. Barring obviously the concussion late in December 2 years ago that sidelined him for the rest of the season, he's been one of the NFL's best quarterbacks the last 2 years. Here's my issue with the ESPN poll. I think the people who respond, Omar, are giving answers based on different criteria. Some are probably thinking to themselves, okay, who's the most talented quarterback? Others are probably thinking, who's the most accomplished? Who deserves a lifetime achievement award, which might explain why Aaron Rodgers ranks in the top 6 in your poll and top 8 in the ESPN poll. I think this should specifically be about who has been the NFL's best quarterback recently. To me, that should be the criteria. Now, recently, obviously, is subjective. You could say 3 years. You could say 4. I would say 2. I think 2 is a fair assessment. So I don't want to base this on who I think is more talented, because if you say who's more talented, then Justin Herbert should be in everyone's top 5. To me, it should be who has been the best the last couple of years. And this is why you and I are going to disagree on this show about where Tua should be.
Here's my defense of my viewpoint, and let me, before I share it, let me defend it. I can't discredit Aaron Rodgers' 4 MVP seasons, and the most recent one being in 2021, because everybody wants to say, oh, he's washed just because they only not seen him last season. And then the year before that, when he was plotting his exit from Green Bay, he wasn't really motivated and didn't have very good weapons around him just because of Davante Adams' disappearance, even though now he said, I'm looking forward to playing with Davante Adams, who came out on the NFL Network's receiver show, basically outing the fact that, hey, get me out of here in terms of the Raiders. As I've told you on this previous podcast, you can look at Devontae Adams' contract and see he's easily going to be moved, probably by the trade deadline. But let me explain how I put together my rankings. First, I group them with elites. Then I get the young guns. Then I get the old heads who basically can still get you. And I stack each quarterback up is, who would I pick? Oh, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. Clearly, I'm going Patrick Mahomes. Okay, who would I pick? Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? Okay, I personally will go Lamar Jackson just because he gives you the volume is turned up a little bit on the athleticism dimension, even though Josh Allen still gives it to you as well. Who would I pick over Josh Allen or Joe Burrow? Well, I would go with Josh Allen. Who would I pick over Joe Burrow and CJ Stroud? Well, that's a toughie. And a lot of people, the biggest issue many people have is in their minds, I rate Dak Prescott too high. I rate Kirk Cousins too high. I rate maybe Jalen Hurts too high. Oh my God, how do you have Brock Purdy as a top 6 quarterback in the NFL? Well, he's only taken a team to the Super Bowl and was at the doorstep the other year. He's been one of 2 quarterbacks with 100 passer rating, and he's got kill moments. Like, he's done everything you've asked him to do. So Aaron Rodgers' positioning is a little complicated. But to get to the consensus, I do have Tua ranked as the 14th best quarterback. And you would struggle to tell me who I need to replace him with. Maybe I put Kirk Cousins beneath him. Maybe, Jared Goff just got the money. So, I don't – and if you look at Jared Goff's record, when I did my research for this piece, I was actually quite surprised because did you know that Jared Goff is 66-50-1 in his career as a starter in 8 seasons? And that includes the 1 year he was really disastrous and didn't win a game for the Rams. So Goff has had a very respectable NFL career, but whose career would I choose? This doesn't take into account salaries. It doesn't take into account age. It just, who would I pick if I needed to build a team and I wanted to win a championship right now? Not a 3-year window, not a 10-year window, but right now. Coincidentally, Deshaun Watson is ranked right under Tua. And doing the research for it, I was quite surprised at how productive he was last season. Deshaun Watson was 5-1 as a starter last season, which was, quite impressive to me before he got injured. Now he's coming back from he injured his throwing shoulder, and hell, who knows? He could be the next Chad Pennington in terms of a guy who doesn't have any arm after a shoulder procedure. But where would you rank Tua if you had to put a number on it?
Well, this is going to shock you because we see Tua totally differently with regard to whether he should get a contract extension and where he should be ranked. I don't believe you should give him an extension simply because I've always had the philosophy that you only give extensions at that amount of money to players who have no questions at all about them. He obviously has the health questions about him. He has the late game performance question about him. He has questions about him with regard to play when he's facing pressure, which was among the worst in the league last year. And I say that even while acknowledging he's a very good quarterback.
When you say that amount of money, what's the dollar? When you say that amount of money, what's the dollar? I know this is going to be the largest contract in franchise history. What's your threshold?
I would be reluctant to give him any contract extension at all that he would accept, simply because there is no harm in waiting for a year and seeing how this year goes and make sure he doesn't get a concussion. So with that being said, and you know my position on the contract extension, again, with all due respect to Tua, who I think the world of. So it's going to shock you when I tell you this. I have Tua 8th on my list, while you have him 14th, while ESPN's executive poll has him 14th. I'm going to tell you why. To me, you have to place importance on what the player has done over the last couple of years. I'm not thinking about ceiling. I'm not thinking about who's the most talented. I'm not giving anyone a career body of work for what Aaron Rodgers did in 2019 or 2020. I am looking at what player is deserving of being in what slot based on performance over the last couple of years. And to me, that puts Tua 8th, and I'm going to tell you why. Some of the players who have been ranked ahead of Tua, to me, simply don't deserve it based on the last couple of years. I know Aaron Rodgers was very good in 2021, But in 2022, for the Packers, 26 TDs, 12 picks, 91.1 rating, obviously missed the playoffs with that debacle of a game on Sunday night to end the season. So he was a slightly above average quarterback that year. The following year, obviously, we all know, missed last season with the Achilles injury sustained in the first game. So I don't know how anyone can say that a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is better than what we've seen from Tua the last 2 years. To me, that's disrespectful to Tua. This is not a career body of work award. This should be who has been the best quarterbacks in the league the last couple of years. So to me, here's how I would rank it, Omar. You and I agree for the most part on the top four. My order is a little bit different. I'm with you in that I have Mahomes and Jackson 1 and 2. We would change the order of Allen and Burrow. I have Burrow third, Allen fourth, simply because Burrow has been less turnover prone in his career. I have Prescott fifth because of the fact that he was extraordinary last year. Obviously, Dallas's defense struggled in the playoff game, which set a bad tone against Green Bay in that blowout loss. But 36 TDs, 9 picks last year. He had 37 TDs, 10 picks 2 years ago, 73 and 41 as a starter. Then to me, there's this next tier where I could flip a coin with order. That tier to me has Stroud, who was great last year as a rookie, 23 TDs, 5 picks, led the league in yards passing per game at 273. Then I have 37th because, as you said, you cannot overlook 17 and 4 as a starter. You can't overlook the 69% completion percentage. You can't overlook the fact that he has a 114.3 career passer rating. And I'm not going to discredit Purdy or Tua because they're in systems that suit their skills. To me, that's unfair to both players. Then I have Tua 8th, Jared Goff 9th because his numbers stack up very well. And to me, you could flip a coin with regard to who's 6 to 9. Now, if I were starting a franchise, which is how you did this study, yes, I would take Stroud over Tua just because of the ceiling and the upside. But to me, Tua should be 6 to 9. As far as the quarterbacks that were in the top 10 in the ESPN poll that I think Tua should be ahead of, to me, Stafford, last couple of years, 87.4, 92.5 rating. Yes, he won a Super Bowl. Yes, he's been a terrific player over the course of his career. But again, I'm not giving away participation trophies. I'm not giving away career body of work on, I guess the word's honors. I'm basing this on the last 2 years. Herbert, last couple of years, obviously lost the lead in Jacksonville in the playoff game. Wasn't great last year. He's never had a passer rating of 100. So to me, Herbert should be lower. And obviously 30 and 32 as a starter. Jordan Love is really good, but we're basing our thoughts on Jordan Love on weeks 11 to 18 last year when he had 18 TDs, 1 pick. Jalen Hurts, his career passer rate. I want to tell you this. Jalen Hurts, 77.6, 87.2, 101.5 during the Super Bowl year, and 89.1. So I put Hurts behind Tua. So that is how I put Tua in my top 10, because to me, you have to emphasize how the guy has done the last couple of years. And whether you think Tua is going to lead you to a Super Bowl or not, whether you see deficiencies in his game or limitations in his athleticism, to me, you have to acknowledge what the guy has done the last 2 years. So I know it sounds crazy that I think they shouldn't give him an extension and you think they do, and I have him ranked 8th and you have him ranked 14th. I know that sounds weird to people, but there's rationale and justification behind both, I think. Am I crazy?
To me, let me go over some of the things that I do have issues with your list, and I understand where you're working off a 2-year window, which is understandable and fine. You have not factored Rodgers is going to be highly motivated to prove, as the oldest NFL player in the league, that he's stem celled up. He's
40. He's 40, Omar.
Quarterbacks can play till they're 40. When did Tom Brady retire? Isn't he in the conversation for top 10 quarterbacks of all time? I don't know. The Jets have improved their offensive line. They've added some weaponry. The old man is motivated and he's trying to show everybody he's the greatest and smartest player ever of NFL history. The only reason I am not a big Herbert proponent, but the only reason I would put Herbert higher than Tua, and I do, is because there might be 2 NFL executives that would select Herbert over Tua ever. And still to this day, despite his 30-30 record, despite the fact that he's gotten 2 head coaches fired, despite the fact that his teammates don't view him as a leader, there would be 2 of 32 NFL executives that would select
Tua over Herbert.
Who would pick Tua over Herbert?
Exactly. True.
Hurts, down year a little bit, but down year for the entire team. At one point, they were the hottest team in the NFL, and then the bottom fell out from underneath them. The dual threat possibility is a little bit more enticing, even though I don't like a quarterback to run. That's an element of the game that Tua does not have. And those dual threats, while they might not last forever, they're very dangerous in today's game. So that's why I would kind of – and then he had the best team in the NFL 2 years ago. I think he was MVP runner-up. That should factor into your 2-year window.
But numbers great season out of 4 for Hurts. I cannot put him in my top 10. I mean, he's obviously a good NFL quarterback, but last year 23 TDs, 15 picks, 89.1 rating, and I know Philly had a lot of problems in unraveling down the stretch, but he wasn't a solution last year, so I cannot have him ranked ahead of Tua.
Now Stafford is one of the ones where you could argue me out of my position. Stafford is a grizzled, established champion. And, he's older, but he's still young enough that he can inject a little fear into your life. 206 starts, but he's 35 years old. However, he did win a Super Bowl 3 years ago, and he just led the team to the playoffs again. I would not take him out of the equation. And then this is when I can argue with myself, Kirk Cousins. 76, 67, and 2 as an NFL starter. He's in the older club. He's 35, but he just received $100 million in guaranteed money from the Atlanta Falcons, and that's despite coming off a season-ending Achilles injury. Tell me what you think Tua Tagovailoa will get contractually if he's coming off an Achilles injury. It wouldn't even be in the ballpark of what Kirk Cousins got.
I was going to tell you, I have Cousins 10th. I think he's been underrated throughout his career. I know the one-loss record is 76, 67, and 2 is not impressive. But look at TDs to interceptions last 5 years. 26 and 6, 35 and 13, 33 and 7, 29 and 14, 18 and 5 before the season-ending injury last season. Consistently over 100 passer rating in his career, which, by the way, if you would talk about 100 passer rating, and I know that's not the end-all and the be-all, and there's no stat that's going to be the perfect stat, but if you use passer rating, which the NFL does, Lamar Jackson twice over 100 in 6 years. Josh Allen once over 100 passer rating in 6 years because of all the picks. Kirk Cousins has a higher percentage of passer ratings over 100 than most any quarterback in the league. So I have him 10th. So my order, Mahomes, Jackson, Burrow, Allen, Prescott. To me, clear-cut top 5. Then I have this next tier, which I could rank in any order. My final order was Stroud 6, Purdy 7, Tua 8, Goff 9. Goff's been very good the last 2 years, and Cousins 10. And then I rank Herbert lower because he simply hasn't been as good as a perception. I rank Stafford lower because 87.4, 92.5 passer ratings the last 2 years, he's on the decline. I rank Love 13 because even though he's really good, the body of work simply hasn't been large enough. Last year was an 8-game sample size where he was really good, but before that, he wasn't very good. I have Hurts 14th for the reasons I explained to you, only one really good year out of 4. And then I have Rodgers 15th because what has he done the last 2 years? What has he done the last 2 years? And now he's 40 to make you think that he's going to be the Aaron Rodgers we saw for 15 years before. To me, it's giving the guy too much credit. Now, is Aaron Rodgers one of the best quarterbacks of all time? Of course he is. I would never disrespect him that way. But to say that he's now a top 8 quarterback, to me, that's a tremendous leap. By the way, I have Watson 16th only because he's played only 12 games the last 3 years, passer rating of 82. So he's got a lot to prove to get back to that top 3 to 5 level. I didn't mean to break your train of thought, but you brought up Cousins, and I want to make that point because I think he's been undervalued in his career. Okay, tell me what your point had been prior to me rudely interrupting you.
No. This is a podcast, Barry. We're discussing things. We can fight. We could go back and forth. I don't object to any. Where's Derek Carr? Like I don't object to
somewhere between 16 and 21. I mean, what's Derek Carr really accomplished in his career, right?
I think he still leads the league in fourth quarter comebacks during his career.
Well, good for him.
No, I was actually pleasantly surprised when you look at his stats with New Orleans. They were very impressive. 8-9 record last year, 68.4% completion, 3,887 yards, 78 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I think that I'm a Carr fan. I think he's an underrated quarterback. This is the only thing I'll probably ever agree with Joe Philbin about. Joe Philbin wanted to draft Derek Carr. I think it was maybe a year after he had drafted Ryan Tannehill, and he just wasn't happy with Tannehill and really advocated for drafting Derek Carr and was talked out of it. I actually think the franchise would be much further ahead if they had done that. Now, does that mean that Derek Carr is the end all be all? No, but he's still a very good quarterback. You know why these rankings, Barry, are important? Because now that we know that Tua needs a contract that says he's one of 8 quarterbacks that got a new deal that averages $50 million a year. We're looking at the company that he keeps here. And where no matter which ranking you want to go by, my ranking, ESPN's ranking, Barry's ranking, Jordan Love, who's beneath him, is up for a contract. Now, it's funny that people are always saying, oh, Jordan Love's so worthy of this contract. He's only played good for half a season. He's played 10 NFL games. I included his 2 playoff games, 1 win, 1 loss. And so everybody's like, now, they got to break him off. Keep in mind that Green Bay did not opt into his 5th-year contract, unlike the Miami Dolphins did too, which was a vote of unconfidence. And what they did was restructure it, added a year for $13 million, which is $10 million less than what his 5th-year contract would have been. So everybody who thinks he's going to go out there and get this new deal, like Green Bay is owned by the people, and the people aren't shelling out $300 million to Jordan Love just yet. They're actually a healthy franchise that believes in drafting quarterbacks, even when you do have a quarterback. So, they're going to be a little bit more patient about what they're doing. But the argument that I'm making is, and this is something that I spent all weekend researching last week, and I've shared it on Twitter. I've written it in a number of pieces. This whole narrative about 8 quarterbacks make $50 million a year. That is false. That is not accurate. That is fictitious lies perpetuated by ESPN agents. If you look at the deals, yes, Joe Burrow's contract averaged $50 million a year, but when he got it, which was at the end of his rookie contract, and then after they opted into his 5th-year option, that's a 7-year deal. And the money never changed on the first 2 years of the contract. All that was added was the $50 million average. And so Burrow, who makes a ridiculous, I think he's at $318 million over the, he's at $315 million over a 7-year deal. That averages out to $45.1 million a year. I've done all of these averages, Barry. I've done the cash number in terms of what they'll actually be paid this season, in terms of what goes into their bank account. And Kirk Cousins, by the way, is the leader at $62 million. Kirk Cousins is always about getting his money and has been the premier leader of get my money quarterbacks. But do you know that there's one quarterback, Barry, one quarterback in the NFL whose contract averages more than $50 million a year? And that's Lamar Jackson, whose mother negotiated his contract. I argue and will stand on any hill and defend this case that Lamar Jackson has the single best contract in the entire NFL and the best quarterback contract. And he got it by standing beside his mother, who did his negotiations. Lamar's at 5 years, $260 million. Is that right? Yeah, I think it's $260 million. No, sorry. Yes, $260 million. He averages $52 million a year. And every year, there's a contract trigger. That means either half or the whole contract is going to be guaranteed for the next year if he makes it by the 10th day of the new league year. So he will receive every single dollar of his 5-year, $260 million contract. And on top of that, he'll get back, and he has a no trade clause and a no tag clause, and he'll get back to the table at the age of 30. So that far, in my mind, exceeds the 12 years, $483 million contract that Patrick Mahomes signed. He has a 12-year deal, just added 2 years to it. He averages $40.3 million a year. So all these people, and yeah, that's Patrick Mahomes. He just renegotiated his contract, so he's going to average 52 over the next 3 years by reworking the numbers, as they always do for these quarterbacks. But over the duration of the deal, only one quarterback, Barry, $50 million a year. So all these people were saying Tua's not worth $50 million a year. I continue to stand and make the argument no quarterback is worth $50 million a year, and no quarterback is getting $50 million a year over the entire duration of their career. Lamar Jackson is the only one. Trevor Lawrence is not. Jalen Hurts is not. Justin Herbert is not. Jared Goff is not. Jared Goff comes in at 49.1. I think he's number 2. And it's interesting, when you follow the numbers and look at the contracts, you will see that Jared Goff's people used Lamar Jackson's contract to get to where he is. Now, what does this mean for Tua? To me, this means Tua is more than likely going to be in the $42 to $44 million a year range. Now, what they report the contract out with, it's probably going to be a 5-year, $250 million extension. But really, it's going to be a 6-year deal that factors in his $23 million 5th-year option that he's playing on now. And then, how they report it, which is how they get away with it, it'll be a $50 million a year deal. But truthfully speaking, it'll average $42 to $44 million a year. And as we've already discussed, I believe the holdup is on the guaranteed money. Now, if I tell you that I will get you Tua Tagovailoa for $42 million a year, with 3 years of it guaranteed, really only $126 million being fully guaranteed. Do you take that deal, Barry, or do you still say, no, I want to see you prove it on the 5th year?
I don't do it. And I know this sounds strange coming from the guy who just ranked Tua the 8th best quarterback in the league, the guy who has consistently praised his work. The reason I don't do it is a couple of things. One, again, I explained my philosophy earlier. To me, you only give that type of money in extensions to players who have no questions at all swirling about them. To me, the concussion concern, obviously having had 2 a couple of years ago, perhaps even 3, depending on whether you think the Buffalo game was a concussion or not, combined with the history of injuries prior to last season, combined with the fact that he struggled against top 10 defenses, combined with the fact that in one-possession games with under 5 minutes left in his career, he has an 83.6 passer rating. All of those factors make me say, what is the point in rushing into a marriage when all it's going to cost you by waiting is potentially cap space, obviously this year, which you don't need, and next year, which you do need. But to me, the risk of committing long-term all of this guaranteed money and then being married to someone who is a good quarterback, but a health risk, to me, that risk far outweighs the benefits of the cap savings of getting him under contract. I don't know why you simply do not play out the season, make sure that he's healthy and productive for another full season, and keep your options open. If he was what he was last year, then I would give him the contract next offseason, even though obviously his play needs to improve against good defenses. But let's say, God forbid, he's concussed in week 4. Let's say he breaks his ankle in week 7. Then you are going to have regret if you're sitting here with this long-term money guaranteed to Tua, especially if Justin Fields should evolve this year, should he beat out Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh and play, or if Dallas and Dak Prescott can't agree to terms. And I know obviously the Dolphins would need to move mountains to be able to afford Prescott. They're already $9 million over the cap next year. But to me, why close your options when you have a player who is a very good player in Tua, but one with a history of injuries and of more concern, head injuries? So that's how I can reconcile what might seem strange to people, Omar. I know it sounds strange to say Tua is the 8th best quarterback in the league, but I would not give him a lucrative extension. But that's how I rationalize it, because I don't believe in closing options, especially when the player you're giving lifetime money to has questions swirling around him. So no, I would not be okay with giving him a contract at that average. I'd be okay with giving him a contract only the most team-friendly of terms, well below market value, and there's no way Tua would accept it. To me, this quarterback is the most complicated negotiation in the league, because reasonable people can make points on both sides. You can say, hey, he led the league in passing yards at 46-24 last season. Hey, passer ratings of 107.3 and 100 and 101 these last 2 years. Hey, he led a team that has consistently won at least until mid-December. So that's one side. Other side of the argument is, I told you, 1 possession games in his career with under 5 minutes left, 6 touchdowns, 4 picks. This past season, 14 for 24, 134 yards, 1 TD, 1 pick in those games. 64.4 passer rating in what the NBA would describe as clutch moments. 5 minutes or less in the game, a 1-possession game. And then obviously we all know about the problems against good defenses, 1-6, which is a team issue. It's not only a Tua issue. Fourth quarter this season, passer rating of 75.9, 18th among starters. Purdy was 123.8. Josh Allen was 104. So to me, this is the incredibly complicated dynamic to me of these negotiations, Omar. You can make a case, reasonable people can make a case for Tua to be one of the top 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the league. And you can also make the case, because of the numbers I just told you and the injury history, that he should not even be in the top 12. So how do you reconcile that conflicting data combined with the perception that he's limited athletically and arriving at a number? How the heck do you arrive at a number?
You know what? I think you bid, or you make an offer that's respectable, that's not going to break the bank. However, that deal, getting the deal done is important, Barry, because you are handcuffed if he is on the tag for the next upcoming offseason. You can't do nothing.
It's a risk I'm willing to take, because what if he's concussed in week 4? How are you going to feel with all of that money committed to him? You're married to the guy for 3 years. And again, I always have to add the caveat that we're Tua fans. We love the young man as a person. He's a very good quarterback. But to me, the health equation changes everything. And I know the whole cap mess you're going to be in if you have to franchise him next offseason. But I tell you this, Brandon Shore and Greer always find a way out. They always find a solution, right?
They always find some credit card. Hey, Ross, can we borrow another credit card so we can run up the tabs, run up the debt somewhere else?
I found that Chase card in my third drawer. I didn't know it was there.
Yeah, you're right, Barry. They always figure out a way, but I think that it's going to be a little bit cumbersome if you let. And if I'm to it and you make me play on my 5th-year option, we're not friends. And I'm doing you no favors. This is my one opportunity to do you favors right now. And if you pass up on that, not only am I going to have to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL next year if I do play well and you do put franchise tag. If you franchise tag me, I need to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. There's no negotiation there. So you better figure that out. And you would be restricting your ability to improve your team the entire offseason if you did that. And, maybe Tariq, a new deal for Tariq could allow you to buy some flexibility. Maybe you shake down Chubb. Maybe you cut Tehran. All the little gymnastics, salary cap gymnastics that they've done every offseason. But the question is, to me, signing Tua, signing Tariq is worth creating a 3-year window to win it all. And then we can reset after we do that. If I don't sign Tariq and I don't sign Tua, I might as well start rebuilding next year, because I personally believe that it's going to be such a cap hell. There's not going to be right now. This roster is patched up with old players and injured players. That only lasts for so long. And I have a hard time believing that they can continue to do that. 2 seasons of doing it, okay, we're pushing it a little bit. A 3rd season of doing that, come on, let's be realistic here.
I'd like to make a couple points, because you've been really good and I think I have as well, to give ourselves a pat on the back, explaining to people in articles on MiamiHerald.com all the numbers. But just to quickly recap what we're looking at. If they don't reach a deal with Tua, and I think you and I both think that they ultimately will in the weeks or months ahead, but if they don't, they could slap the exclusive franchise tag on Tua next offseason, which would pay him $55 million in 2025. I agree with you. That's prohibitive when a long-term contract could cut his cap number to somewhere in the range of 18 to 25 million. So how do you afford 55 million on your cap? I get that. I agree with you on that, Omar. But you could also use a non-exclusive franchise tag, which is projected to be 42.1 million next year. Could end up a little bit higher based on what the 2025 cap is. That allows a player to sign an offer sheet with another team. So in that scenario, the original team has the right to match the offer, or you get 2 first-round draft picks as compensation. So that 42.1 is definitely 15 to 20 million higher than what his cap number would be if you do an extension. But to me, that 42.1 is more palatable than obviously the exclusive franchise tag of 55 million. And then at 42.1, you allow the market to dictate what Tua could get. Let's see if someone will give him an average of $50 to $55 million a year. That would allow the market to dictate what he would be paid. And then finally, you have the transition tag option in 2025. That's only a 35.3 million cap hit. I say only, obviously it's, there's context needed with only, but that transition tag works like the non-exclusive franchise tag, but it only provides the original team the right to match another team's offer. If the original team decides not to offer a matching bid, it gets no compensation when the player leaves. So to me, the transition tag is also a viable option. Now, the one thing that you just hinted at that I wanted to ask you about, which we haven't factored into this very cold numerical analysis of Tua, and that is the emotion of the player. As you said, and which was very funny, I'm not going to want to be friends with you anymore if you continue to string me along like this and don't give me my money. So the question is, what damage can be done in the emotional relationship? And does it really matter beyond just a salacious drama story angle? How is this actually going to affect this season if he is emotionally hurt by the Dolphins not giving him an extension? To me, it would motivate him more to go out and have a great year. No?
You know what's funny, Barry? And I don't think you were there the day that Tua talked, but he was angry. He was very, and he basically said, I don't know how you can't take it personal, but I take this personal. Like, you're messing with my money, my family. He didn't say this, but you're disrespecting me in the things that you're saying in these negotiations, and I can't look at you the same way. Just like Mike McDaniel's like, I'm staying out of this. I'm not in this. Like, I love him. I coach him. I'm not involved. So
I just work here.
Yeah, I just work here. I just make the offense and call plays. I don't even do anything with defense. I just work here. This is all on Chris Greer. That's Mike McDaniel's attitude towards the situation. Like, he's like, I've negotiated with Tua to get him to do 7-on-7s. He's actually showing up here. Like, I'm the good guy in this situation. It's clear he's angry. What will he do if this deal doesn't get done by the 23rd or the 24th? Is he going to sit out training camp? Is he going to hold in training camp? Is he going to limit his participation to 7-on-7? How is he going to get the team's attention? And I'm friends with agents. I know agents. I know how they work. And at the bare minimum, he clearly should sit in, because why give away $50,000 per day when you don't need to? And you could show up for work. You could attend meetings. You just won't participate. And I think that could possibly be what's in the equation for Tua for the first 2 weeks of camp. Why not rest his arm? While you see how horrible your offense looks with Mike White and Skylar Thompson and the desperation begins. This reminds me a lot of the Xavier Howard negotiation when Xavier showed up, demanded a trade, and then said, basically, get me out of here or get me my money. You choose. The Dolphins watched Noah Igbenogany for 2 weeks and then said, Xavier, let's figure this out. Let's renegotiate this contract. Now that's just the nature of the NFL. When you have the hammer, you need to swing it, and Tua does not need to participate in practice until he gets his money. And technically,
what advantage would it be to him, though, for this to extend into the regular season? He's obviously not going to sit out.
No, I didn't say extend to the regular season.
Okay, so if he misses snaps in preseason, he's had so much time in this offense. The only players he hasn't consistently worked with, obviously, are Jonnu Smith and Odell Beckham. So yes, it would be beneficial if he got reps in this offense in late July and August with those two players. But to me, if he doesn't participate in 11-on-11, it's a big deal. Why would that move the needle with Chris Greer? Is Chris Greer suddenly going to say, you know what, let's give him $55 million so he doesn't sit out a July 31st practice? No, to me, the Dolphins have the power here. There's very little Tua can do. I mean, if he throws a fit and asks for a trade, good luck in finding a trade, right? I don't see that happening. We don't see him opting out of $23.1 million and sitting out the season. So to me, the Dolphins still control this negotiation. It's about how much discipline Greer is going to continue to show in terms of, and to me, understandably putting a limit on what they want to pay him because primarily of the injury history. I just don't see where Tua has much control or that he can wrest much control simply by sitting out of 11-on-11s or 7-on-7s. I just don't get it.
It's going to stifle the offense. It's going to stifle the development of the offense. Imagine if Tyreek does the same thing. Imagine if Odell Beckham doesn't get any work with Tua or Jonnu Smith doesn't get any work with Tua. How well oiled do you think that you're going to be in September as an offense? That it's going now, mind you, I don't think Tua needs to play in the exhibition season. So we can keep this crusade going all the way till the start of the regular season. And then Tua can start actually throwing 2 weeks before the season opener. But do not pretend like that's not going to limit your offense. There's a reason that they practice for 6 weeks before they play a game that matters.
True. I just don't see Tua having really any power to control this process. Ultimately, it's going to be what Chris Greer and Steve Ross are comfortable paying him, and either he accepts it or he asks for a trade. And again, there's no indication that he would ask for a trade, but if he does ask for a trade, they can look at the market and say, Tua, we tried, we just can't trade you. And what's he going to do then? He's going to play this year. He's going to give it his full effort. He's going to know that he is going to hit the market with either a transition tag or a non-exclusive tag next offseason, and he is going to play his butt off. Plus, he's a high-charactered young man, so you know he's not going to half-ass it at all. So to me, the Dolphins should not cave in negotiations simply because of concern that Tua might be upset or Tua might sit out 11-on-11s, or Tua might take his blanket like Linus and go in the corner and suck his thumb. To me, none of that should concern them. He's going to play. He's a high-charactered young man. He knows he's going into the open market potentially with a transition tag or non-exclusive tag next season if this doesn't get done. So to me, the Dolphins still hold the vast majority of the power here. Now, all that being said, I think both of us are still optimistic it gets done because we know Chris Greer and Ross like Tua. They want stability at position and because he's been a good quarterback. But to me, you don't cave and say, oh, forget the concussion concerns just because he's unhappy. I mean, they've spent 4 years caring about his feelings, right? And had to protect him from the big bad Brian Flores and tell him we love you and ignore the Deshaun Watson rumors. We're going to build you a house. We're going to bring you breakfast in bed. I mean, stop worrying about the guy's emotions. He's a grown man. He can handle it.
Okay, Barry. Well, you've laid the gauntlet down. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. If Chris Greer and Tua, they're never going to be friends anymore if they go the route you're talking about.
It's totally fine if they're not. I mean, there have been a lot of GMs and quarterbacks who aren't bosom buddies, right? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think calmer heads, Teron Armstead was on Kay and Adams and basically said, the organization knows that this guy, we go as far as this guy takes us. Tua's not going to demand the trade. This is his team. He knows that. The question is, how well are they going to compensate him? I think that they will get a 6-year deal done, putting him in the realm of the real $42-43 million a year quarterbacks. And I don't have a problem with that. If they give him the exact deal that Jalen Hurts got, which was 6 years, $260 million, I know you would balk at it, but I would think, good move for you, Dolphins organization. I just care about the 3-year window. I think that they're good. They need to do things to get better. And starting over at quarterback is not one of those things.
Right. Now, I have one final quick point I want to make, Omar. I don't think it's an egregious mistake to give him an extension. I'd be fine if they gave it to him, as you said, for all the reasons you explained. He's a good quarterback. You have a 3-year window here. All I'm saying is that I wouldn't do it, but I don't think it's a terrible mistake if you do it.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Barry, you kind of talked me into, playing hardball. But the problem is, I think that, and we will see on the 24th and the 23rd, what stand the players take in regards to this negotiations. And I think this is probably one of those situations where the players will get involved. We shall see. Training camp begins next week. Veterans Report on Tuesday. The Dolphins In-Depth podcast. We intend to be here every day. That's right, folks. Every single day of training camp. Me and Barry. We will see you next week.